Have you ever walked into a room and felt like everyone had already decided you didn't belong? That was exactly how I felt as I stepped inside my grandmother's mansion. The ballroom looked stunning. Black and gold balloons floated above elegant tables. Soft jazz filled the air, and warm lights reflected off crystal chandeliers. Guests in designer suits and evening gowns laughed, while waiters carried trays of desserts and sparkling fruit drinks. Tonight wasn't just another birthday party. It was my grandmother Eleanor Carter's 80th birthday. She had spent decades building one of the most respected real estate companies in the state, so nearly everyone important was there. Business leaders, lawyers, politicians, old family friends, and relatives crowded the room, all waiting to celebrate her. Then there was me, standing quietly near the entrance with a small black gift box tied with a gold ribbon. It wasn't expensive. There was no designer logo or luxury jewelry inside. It was simply something I had made with my own hands for the one person who had always loved me without conditions. I took a slow breath. Just make it through tonight, I whispered to myself. Unfortunately, my mother noticed me almost immediately. Well, look who finally showed up. Her voice was loud enough for nearby guests to stop talking. My mother, Victoria Carter, looked flawless in her elegant black evening gown, covered in diamonds that sparkled under the lights. She looked at the gift in my hands and smirked. "That's your present?" I nodded. "I made it for Grandma." She let out a sarcastic laugh. "Of course you did. You never could afford anything nice." A few cousins laughed. Someone behind me whispered, "That's so embarrassing." I lowered my eyes, pretending I didn't hear them. This wasn't the first time. Growing up, my mother compared me to everyone. My older brother became a successful attorney. My younger sister owned a luxury fashion brand. And me? I became an elementary school teacher. I loved my job. Helping children learn meant more to me than a big paycheck ever could. But to my mother, that made me the family disappointment. The only person who never treated me that way was Grandma Eleanor. She always smiled and reminded me, "Kindness is worth more than money, sweetheart." Never forget that. As I looked across the ballroom, I saw Grandma sitting near the stage. The moment our eyes met, she smiled warmly and gave me a gentle nod. For the first time that night, I felt like I belonged. I started walking toward her. But before I could reach her, my mother stepped directly into my path. "Oh, we're not finished," she said with a cold smile. The room suddenly grew quiet. Dozens of people turned to watch us. I didn't know it yet. But before Grandma's birthday celebration was over, a secret she'd protected for years would change everything. And everyone laughing at me would soon regret it. My mother stood there with her arms crossed, making sure everyone in the room was watching. "So," she said with a fake smile, "why don't you show everyone what you brought Grandma?" I looked around the ballroom. Dozens of eyes were fixed on me. Some looked curious. Others looked amused. I swallowed the lump in my throat and held up the small black gift box. "It's nothing expensive," I admitted. "I just wanted to make something personal." Before I could finish, my mother laughed. "Personal?" She shook her head dramatically. "Honey, this isn't kindergarten." A few guests chuckled. I heard someone whisper, "She always makes things awkward." My face burned with embarrassment. Just then, Grandma Eleanor slowly stood from her chair. The entire room fell silent. Even the band stopped playing. She smiled at me and stretched out her hands. "Ava," she said warmly, "bring it here." I walked toward her, trying to ignore everyone's stares. Grandma carefully accepted the little box as if it were the most valuable gift in the room. She untied the ribbon herself. Inside was a handmade photo album. Every page held old family pictures I had restored by hand over the past month. Some photos were faded, others were torn. I had spent countless nights repairing each one and writing short memories. Beneath every picture in beautiful calligraphy, Grandma slowly turned the pages. Her hands trembled. A soft smile spread across her face. Tears filled her eyes. "Oh, sweetheart," she whispered. "I thought these pictures were gone forever." The room became completely quiet. She looked up at everyone and proudly held the album against her chest. "This," she said, her voice shaking with emotion, "is the most meaningful gift I've received tonight." Several guests exchanged surprised looks. My mother forced a smile, but I could see the irritation growing on her face. "I'm sure it's very sweet," she interrupted, "but we still have the real surprise planned." She clapped her hands twice. 2 event staff members walked toward the stage carrying 3 elegant black velvet boxes. The audience immediately became excited. People leaned forward in their seats. Someone whispered, "Those must be the family heirlooms." Another guest smiled. "This is going to be interesting." Grandma slowly looked at the boxes. For just a second, her warm smile disappeared. She didn't say a word. She simply folded her hands together and looked across the room until her eyes met mine. There was something unusual in her expression. Not fear, not sadness, almost confidence, like she already knew something no one else did. I didn't understand it, but somehow it made me feel calm. Meanwhile, my mother stepped onto the stage and picked up the microphone with a proud smile. "Ladies and gentlemen," she announced, "it's finally time to honor Grandma's legacy." The room erupted into applause. I had no idea that in just a few minutes, my mother would make the biggest mistake of her life. My mom stood center stage like she owned the whole room. She tapped the microphone twice. "Can I get everyone's attention, please?" The conversation stopped instantly. Every head turned toward the stage. She flashed that perfect fake smile she always used when she wanted people to think she was the world's greatest daughter. "First of all," she said, "thank you all for coming to celebrate my amazing mother." Everyone clapped. Grandma Eleanor simply smiled but didn't say a word. Something about her expression felt different. She looked calm, almost like she was waiting for something. Mom continued, "Tonight isn't just about celebrating 80 incredible years." She paused dramatically. "It's also about passing down our family's legacy." The audience nodded. Some guests even pulled out their phones to record. Mom pointed toward the 3 velvet boxes sitting on a table beside the stage. "Inside these boxes are family heirlooms that have been in our family for generations." People whispered excitedly. "No way. I heard one of those rings is worth a fortune." "I wonder who's getting what." Mom picked up the first velvet box. "This beautiful diamond ring goes to my oldest son, Ethan." My brother smiled from ear to ear as he walked onto the stage. Mom hugged him tightly while everyone applauded. "You've made this family proud," she said proudly. He thanked her and walked back to his seat, showing off the ring like he'd already won the lottery. Then Mom grabbed the second box. "This gold vintage watch goes to my daughter, Olivia." My younger sister gasped dramatically. "Oh my gosh. Mom, seriously?" She rushed onto the stage, hugged Mom, and held the watch high enough for everyone to admire. More applause filled the ballroom. Camera flashes lit up the room. Then, only one box remained. The smallest one. My heart started pounding. I wasn't expecting anything. Honestly, I would have been perfectly happy just seeing Grandma smile. But the way my mom looked at me made my stomach sink. She slowly picked up the last box. The room became completely silent. Then she smiled. "Ava." She stretched my name out just enough to make it uncomfortable. "Come on up here." Every eye in the ballroom landed on me. I slowly stood. My legs felt weak as I walked toward the stage. Mom handed me the tiny velvet box with a grin that didn't feel loving. It felt planned. "Go ahead," she said loudly. "Open it." I looked over at Grandma. She met my eyes. Then, almost too small for anyone else to notice, she gave me the tiniest nod. Like she was silently telling me, "Trust me." I took a deep breath, reached for the lid, and had no idea that the next few seconds were about to leave the entire room completely speechless. The ballroom was so quiet you could hear a fork hit the floor. I stared at the little velvet box in my hands. My mom folded her arms with that smug smile on her face. "Go ahead, Ava," she said. "Everybody's waiting." I slowly lifted the lid. My heart dropped. The box was empty. Not a ring, not a necklace, not even a note. Just an empty piece of black velvet. For a second, I honestly thought there had to be some mistake. I looked inside again. Nothing. A few guests started laughing. Not loud, just enough for me to hear. Someone whispered, "Seriously? She got an empty box?" Another person chuckled. "That's cold." I could feel every pair of eyes locked on me. My face burned. My hands started shaking. Then my mom leaned closer to the microphone. "You've always said material things don't matter." She shrugged dramatically. "So, we figured you'd appreciate the box more than what's inside it." The room exploded with awkward laughter. Even a few distant relatives smiled because they didn't know what else to do. My brother looked down at the floor. My sister couldn't stop grinning. It was obvious. They knew this was coming. This whole thing had been planned. Every second of it. My mom wanted everyone here to believe one thing, that I didn't deserve to be part of this family, that I wasn't worth a real gift, that I was the disappointment she'd always claimed I was. My chest tightened. Every part of me wanted to throw the box across the room. I wanted to scream, to tell everyone exactly what kind of person my mother really was. But then, I remembered Grandma's eyes, that tiny nod. Trust me. I took a slow breath, closed the empty box, looked straight at my mom, and smiled. Thank you. That's all I said. 2 simple words. The smile on my mom's face froze. She blinked. Almost like my reaction wasn't part of her plan. She wanted tears. She wanted drama. She wanted me to lose control in front of everyone. Instead, I thanked her. The room suddenly felt awkward. The laughter faded. Guests started looking at each other. A few people shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Then, I felt something touch my hand under the table. Soft, gentle. I looked down. Grandma Eleanor had quietly reached over and slipped a tiny folded piece of paper into my palm. No one else noticed. She didn't say a word. She simply squeezed my hand once. I closed my fingers around the note without looking at it. Whatever was written inside, Grandma wanted me to wait. And judging by the calm look on her face, she already knew exactly how tonight was going to end. My mother thought she had just humiliated me in front of the entire room. She had no idea. The biggest surprise of the night hadn't happened yet. I kept my hand closed around the folded note. My heart was pounding so hard I could barely hear anything else. Mom was already thanking everyone for coming, smiling like she'd just pulled off the greatest moment of the night. People started clapping. Some guests walked over to congratulate my brother and sister on their gifts. No one came over to me. Honestly, I was used to it. I quietly slipped away from the crowd and headed toward the hallway near the restrooms. I needed a minute. The second I was alone, I leaned against the wall and finally opened my hand. The note was tiny, folded twice. Grandma's handwriting was neat, even at 80 years old. I unfolded it carefully. 7 words stared back at me. Everything real already belongs to you, sweetheart. I blinked. Then I read it again. Everything real already belongs to you. My mind couldn't make sense of it. What did she mean? The jewelry? The house? Was she talking about something else? At the bottom of the note was a phone number. Underneath it, just one name, Daniel Brooks. No explanation, no address, nothing. Before I could think any further, someone knocked on the restroom door. Ava? It was Grandma. I quickly folded the note and opened the door. She smiled gently. You okay, baby? I forced a smile. I think so. She reached over and fixed a loose strand of my hair like she used to when I was little. I'm sorry you had to go through that. I shook my head. I don't care about the gifts. She looked straight into my eyes. I know. That's why you deserve something much bigger. I frowned. What does the note mean? Grandma glanced toward the ballroom to make sure no one was nearby. I can't explain tonight. Not here. But tomorrow morning, she squeezed my hand. Call the number, no matter what anyone says. I nodded slowly. She smiled. Can you promise me that? I promise. For the first time all evening, Grandma looked completely at peace. Like a huge weight had finally been lifted off her shoulders. Then she whispered something that sent chills down my spine. Your mother thinks tonight was the end of your story. She smiled. But sweetheart, it's only the beginning. Before I could ask another question, she walked back into the ballroom. I stood there frozen, still holding the note, still trying to understand what she meant. Behind the ballroom doors, I could hear my mom laughing with guests, completely convinced she'd embarrassed me in front of everyone. She had no clue that by this time tomorrow, everything she believed belonged to her would be gone forever. I barely slept that night. Grandma's note stayed on my nightstand, and I must have read it 20 times. Everything real already belongs to you, sweetheart. Those words kept replaying in my head. What did she mean? Had she been talking about the family business? The mansion? Or was it something completely different? At exactly 8 a.m. the next morning, I grabbed my phone and stared at the number written on the note. Daniel Brooks. I took a deep breath and hit call. The phone rang once, twice. Then a calm man's voice answered. Daniel Brooks speaking. Hi, my name's Ava Carter. There was a brief silence. Then his tone completely changed. Miss Carter, I've been expecting your call. That sentence instantly gave me chills. You were? Yes. Your grandmother asked me to wait until this morning. I sat up straight. My grandma? That's correct. I'm her attorney. Attorney? Now I was even more confused. She left very specific instructions. I'd like you to come to my office as soon as possible. Can you make it by 10? I glanced at the clock. It was only a little after 8. Yeah, I can be there. Perfect. And Ava? Please don't discuss this with anyone in your family. We'll explain everything once you arrive. The call ended. I stared at my phone. My hands were shaking. An attorney? Grandma had hired an attorney, and somehow I was part of whatever she'd been planning. About an hour later, I pulled into downtown and parked outside a tall glass office building. The gold letters on the front read, Brooks and Harrison Law Group. This wasn't some tiny neighborhood office. This was one of the biggest law firms in the city. I walked inside. The receptionist smiled the second I said my name. Miss Carter? We've been expecting you. Again, those same words. She escorted me to a private conference room overlooking the city skyline. A few moments later, Daniel Brooks walked in carrying a thick black folder. He looked to be in his late 50s, wearing an expensive navy suit. He smiled politely before taking a seat across from me. First, he said quietly, your grandmother wanted me to tell you something. I leaned forward. He opened the folder and pulled out a sealed envelope. The message inside is only for you. My heartbeat sped up. He carefully slid the envelope across the table. I recognized the handwriting immediately. It was Grandma Eleanor's, as I reached for it. I had no idea that opening this letter was about to change my entire life forever. I picked up the envelope with shaky hands. Just seeing Grandma's handwriting made my chest tighten. Daniel stayed quiet, giving me all the time I needed. I slowly broke the seal and unfolded the letter. The first line hit me like a truck. My dearest Ava, if you're reading this, it means my plan has already begun. I swallowed hard and kept reading. I know last night hurt you. I saw every smile, every laugh, and every cruel word. Please don't let any of it break your spirit. My eyes started filling with tears. Grandma knew. She had seen everything. She continued, you have spent your entire life putting others before yourself. You never asked me for money. You never asked for gifts. You only asked for my time, and that made you different from everyone else. I had to stop for a second. My vision blurred. Daniel quietly slid a box of tissues across the table. I smiled weakly and thanked him before reading the rest. For years, your mother, brother, and sister believed they were building my legacy, but they were only chasing my money. You, however, protected my memories. That's why the album you gave me meant more than every expensive gift in that ballroom. Tears rolled down my face. I could still picture Grandma hugging that album. Then I reached the final paragraph. Everything I built was never meant for the people who loved my bank account. It was always meant for the person who loved me. I slowly lowered the letter. The room felt completely silent. I looked up at Daniel. What does she mean? He took a deep breath. Your grandmother updated her estate plan about 3 years ago. 3 years. So, my mom doesn't know? He shook his head. No, neither does your brother. Or your sister. I stared at him, completely speechless. He reached into the black folder and carefully pulled out another document. This one looked official. Several pages, multiple signatures, a gold notary seal. He placed it in front of me. This, he said calmly, is your grandmother's final will. I could barely breathe. My hands trembled as I looked at the first page. Before I could read a single word, Daniel looked me straight in the eye. Ava, there's something you need to know before you turn that page. I froze. What is it? He paused for a moment, then quietly said the words that would change my life forever. Your grandmother didn't leave you one gift. She left you everything. I stared at Daniel, convinced I'd heard him wrong. I'm sorry. What did you just say? He folded his hands on the table. Your grandmother left her entire estate to you. I blinked. No, that can't be right. My mom has always handled Grandma's business. My brother's been working for the company for years. My sister keeps telling everyone she's the future of the family. Daniel nodded. I know. That's exactly why your grandmother kept this confidential. He slid the will closer to me. Go ahead. I looked down at the document. There it was, in black and white. I, Eleanor Carter, being of sound mind. I skipped ahead until I found my name. Then my heart nearly stopped. I was named the sole beneficiary of everything. The Carter estate, the family mansion, the real estate company, investment accounts, vacation properties, everything. My mouth went dry. There has to be a mistake. Daniel shook his head. There isn't. Your grandmother reviewed this will every year. She never changed her mind. I leaned back in my chair, completely overwhelmed. But why me? Daniel smiled. Because she trusted you. He opened another folder filled with handwritten notes. For years, your grandmother documented everything. Every visit. Every phone call. Every holiday. He showed me one page after another. Some entries mentioned how my mother only called when she wanted money. Others described my brother asking for promotions inside the company. Several pages talked about my sister trying to convince Grandma to sell family property for quick cash. Then Daniel handed me another page. It was about me. Ava visited today after work. She fixed the fence in my garden. She refused the check I offered her. Instead, she stayed for dinner and listened to my stories. Another page. Ava brought me homemade soup because she heard I wasn't feeling well. She never asked for anything. Another. If anyone deserves what I've built, it's the granddaughter who loved me when nobody was watching. By now, I couldn't hold back the tears. Daniel quietly waited. After a long moment, he spoke again. There's one more thing. I looked up. We'll officially read the will tomorrow morning. My stomach tightened. In front of everyone? Yes. Your mother. Your brother. Your sister. The board members. And the entire family. I already knew what they expected. They thought Mom would inherit everything. They had no clue what was coming. Daniel closed the folder and smiled. I'd recommend getting some rest tonight. Because tomorrow, he paused for a second, it's going to be unforgettable. As I walked out of the law office, my phone suddenly started ringing. The caller ID made my heart sink. Mom calling? I stared at Daniel, convinced I'd heard him wrong. I'm sorry. What did you just say? He folded his hands on the table. Your grandmother left her entire estate to you. I blinked. No, that can't be right. My mom has always handled Grandma's business. My brother's been working for the company for years. My sister keeps telling everyone she's the future of the family. Daniel nodded. I know. That's exactly why your grandmother kept this confidential. He slid the will closer to me. Go ahead. I looked down at the document. There it was, in black and white. I, Eleanor Carter, being of sound mind. I skipped ahead until I found my name. Then my heart nearly stopped. I was named the sole beneficiary of everything. The Carter estate, the family mansion, the real estate company, investment accounts, vacation properties, everything. My mouth went dry. There has to be a mistake. Daniel shook his head. There isn't. Your grandmother reviewed this will every year. She never changed her mind. I leaned back in my chair, completely overwhelmed. But why me? Daniel smiled. Because she trusted you. He opened another folder filled with handwritten notes. For years, your grandmother documented everything. Every visit. Every phone call. Every holiday. He showed me one page after another. Some entries mentioned how my mother only called when she wanted money. Others described my brother asking for promotions inside the company. Several pages talked about my sister trying to convince Grandma to sell family property for quick cash. Then Daniel handed me another page. It was about me. Ava visited today after work. She fixed the fence in my garden. She refused the check I offered her. Instead, she stayed for dinner and listened to my stories. Another page. Ava brought me homemade soup because she heard I wasn't feeling well. She never asked for anything. Another. If anyone deserves what I've built, it's the granddaughter who loved me when nobody was watching. By now, I couldn't hold back the tears. Daniel quietly waited. After a long moment, he spoke again. There's one more thing. I looked up. We'll officially read the will tomorrow morning. My stomach tightened. In front of everyone? Yes. Your mother. Your brother. Your sister. The board members. And the entire family. I already knew what they expected. They thought Mom would inherit everything. They had no clue what was coming. Daniel closed the folder and smiled. I'd recommend getting some rest tonight. Because tomorrow, he paused for a second, it's going to be unforgettable. As I walked out of the law office, my phone suddenly started ringing. The caller ID made my heart sink. Mom calling? My phone kept vibrating in my hand. Mom calling? For a second, I thought about ignoring it. After everything she'd done at Grandma's birthday, I didn't owe her anything. But something told me to answer. I took a deep breath and swiped. "Hello? Ava, where are you?" Her voice sounded different. Not confident, not smug, almost nervous. "I'm out." "Out where?" "Just running errands." There was a long pause. Then she lowered her voice. "Listen, Grandma's asking about you." That surprised me. "She is?" "Yeah. She said she needs to see you before tomorrow." I frowned. "Tomorrow?" Mom quickly changed the subject. "Anyway, your brother and sister are coming over tonight. We're having a family dinner. I expect you to be there." I almost laughed. "Really? You expect me to come after what happened last night?" Silence. Then she sighed dramatically. "Oh, don't be so sensitive. It was just a joke." "A joke?" Standing me on a stage, handing me an empty box, letting everyone laugh at me. "That was a joke? You embarrassed me in front of hundreds of people." Mom sounded annoyed now. "You're overreacting. Besides, nobody even remembers." I looked out the windshield and shook my head. "You'd be surprised what people remember." She ignored the comment. "Just be here at 6. We have something important to discuss." Before I could answer, she hung up. No apology, no remorse, just another order. I tossed the phone onto the passenger seat. Daniel had warned me not to tell anyone about the will. Now I understood why. My family had no clue what Grandma had planned. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't going to warn them. That evening, I drove to my mom's house. Not because she ordered me to. Because I wanted to see how everyone acted when they still believed they had already won. The dining room was packed. My brother Ethan was bragging about expanding the family business. Olivia was showing off her expensive watch from Grandma's birthday. Mom stood at the head of the table, smiling like she was already the queen of the Carter family. The second I walked in, the room went quiet. Mom forced another fake smile. "Look who decided to join us." Nobody offered me a seat. Nobody asked how I was doing. It was the same as always. Then Mom lifted her wine glass. Before taking a sip, she smiled at everyone. "By this time tomorrow," she laughed confidently, "our family's future will finally be secure." Everyone raised their glasses. Everyone except me, because I already knew something they didn't. By this time tomorrow, everything they thought belonged to them would belong to someone else, and not a single one of them saw it coming. The next morning, I pulled into the parking lot of Brooks and Harrison Law Group. Luxury SUVs and expensive sports cars filled every parking space. My family had already arrived. I took one deep breath before walking inside. The receptionist recognized me immediately. "Good morning, Miss Carter." She escorted me to the largest conference room in the building. The moment I walked in, every head turned toward me. My mom rolled her eyes. "Well, look who finally made it." My brother Ethan smirked. "Hope you're not expecting anything today." Olivia laughed. "Maybe they'll give you another empty box." A few relatives chuckled. I didn't respond. Not this time. Instead, I quietly took the only empty chair at the far end of the table. Mom leaned toward me. "You know, I hardly slept." I raised an eyebrow. "Oh?" She smiled proudly. "I've already started planning what to do with the company. I'll probably replace a few executives." Ethan grinned. "I've already got ideas for expanding the business," Olivia added. "And I'm definitely remodeling the mansion." They were already spending money they didn't own. I almost felt sorry for them. Almost. A few moments later, the conference room doors opened. Daniel Brooks walked in carrying a thick black binder. Behind him came Grandma Eleanor. Everyone immediately stood up. Mom rushed over. "Mom, you look amazing." She kissed Grandma on the cheek. Grandma smiled politely, but her eyes found me first. She gave me the same calm smile she'd given me at the birthday party. That tiny smile reminded me, "Trust me." Daniel cleared his throat. "Thank you all for coming. As requested by Mrs. Eleanor Carter, today we will formally review her updated estate plan." Mom couldn't hide her excitement. She reached over and squeezed Ethan's hand. Olivia was practically bouncing in her chair. Daniel opened the binder. "The previous will has been legally revoked." Mom nodded confidently. "Good." Daniel continued. "We will now read the current and legally binding version." The room became completely silent. You could hear the air conditioner humming. Daniel adjusted his glasses and began reading. After a few pages covering personal gifts and charitable donations, he finally reached the final section, the remainder of Mrs. Eleanor Carter's estate. Mom straightened her back. Ethan smiled. Olivia held her breath. And including the Carter family residence. The Carter Development Company, all investment portfolios, and every remaining personal asset. Daniel looked up from the document, then calmly spoke the next sentence. Is awarded in its entirety. The room froze. Nobody moved. Nobody even blinked. Daniel slowly turned his head, looked directly at me, and finished reading. To her granddaughter, Ava Carter. The silence lasted only 2 seconds. Then the room exploded.
What?
My mom shot up from her chair so fast it nearly tipped over. That's impossible! Her voice echoed through the conference room. There has to be some kind of mistake. Daniel didn't even flinch. There is no mistake, Mrs. Carter. This will was signed, witnessed, notarized, and reviewed multiple times over the last 3 years. My brother Ethan slammed both hands on the table. You're telling me she left me nothing? Daniel calmly looked down at the document. You've each received personal keepsakes listed in the will, but the estate itself belongs entirely to Ava Carter, do you know? Olivia's face turned bright red. She looked at Grandma. Grandma, tell him he's wrong. You promised we'd always take care of the company. Grandma slowly stood up. The room fell silent. She looked around at everyone before speaking. I promised to leave my legacy to the person who truly cared about me. Nobody said a word. Grandma turned toward my mom. Victoria? How many times did you visit me last year? Mom blinked. I was busy. Grandma nodded. Exactly. Then she looked at Ethan. Do you remember my birthday 2 years ago? He looked down. No, duh. And you canceled because you had a golf tournament, so. She turned to Olivia. And you? Olivia couldn't even meet her eyes. Grandma sighed. You're the only person who showed up when I was lonely. The only person who called without asking for money. The only person who treated me like family instead of a paycheck. She smiled at me. Was Ava, and I felt tears welling up again. My mom wasn't crying. She was furious, or this is her fault! She pointed directly at me. She manipulated you. She turned you against your own family. I slowly stood. For the first time in my life. I wasn't afraid of her. I didn't ask Grandma for anything. I never even knew about the will until yesterday. Mom laughed bitterly. Oh, please. You expect us to believe that? Before I could answer, Grandma spoke. I asked Daniel to keep it a secret. I wanted to see who loved me, and who only loved what I owned. The room became painfully quiet. Several relatives lowered their heads. Even they looked embarrassed. Daniel carefully closed the binder. The decision is final. There are no legal grounds to challenge the will. Mom's face turned pale. She realized this wasn't just a bad dream. It was real. Everything she'd spent years planning. Every promotion, every investment, every dream of controlling the Carter empire had disappeared in less than 5 minutes. And for the very first time, she had absolutely no control over what happened next. The conference room stayed silent. Nobody knew what to say. For years, everyone believed my mom would take over Grandma's empire. Now, everything had changed. My mom slowly sat back down, staring at the table. She looked completely defeated. Ethan rubbed his forehead, unable to believe what had just happened. Olivia wiped away angry tears, realizing all her plans had vanished in a matter of minutes. Grandma looked around the room one last time. I didn't make this decision because I loved one grandchild more than the others, she said calmly. I made it because a legacy isn't measured by money. It's measured by character. She turned toward me and smiled. Ava has something no amount of wealth can buy. A kind heart. I walked over and hugged her tightly. I don't know how to thank you, I whispered. She smiled. You already have. You loved me when nobody else was paying attention. That meant more to me than any mansion, business, or bank account ever could. A few days later, I officially stepped into my new role as owner of Carter Development. Instead of firing people or showing off my new position, I spent my first week meeting every employee. I listened to their ideas. I thanked them for their years of hard work. Some had worked beside Grandma for over 30 years. They weren't just employees. They were family. As for my mom, she tried calling me several times. She even left voicemail after voicemail. But for the first time in my life, I wasn't afraid to set boundaries. I wished her well, but I refused to let her guilt control my life anymore. Grandma's lesson stayed with me every single day. Money can build a fortune, but only kindness builds a legacy. And that's exactly the legacy I plan to protect. Sometimes the people who underestimate you end up teaching you just how strong you really are. And sometimes the greatest gift isn't the one everyone can see. It's the one that changes your life forever. The end. And thanks so much for watching. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our next emotional story. Now it's your turn. Which city are you watching from? Tell us in the comments. What city and country are you watching from? Have you ever experienced something like Ava did? What lesson did this story teach you? We read as many comments as we can, and we'd love to hear your story. Thanks again for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.